Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Abilities 2024 International Disability Rights Affirmation Conference. I am Liberty Fairlander, and I am visually impaired. I am American, and I've been part of Second Life for 21 years now. It was the creativity of Second Life that first drew me in, as I am an artist in real life. Over the years, I've also become involved in many other areas, most of which center around volunteerism because I find a lot of fulfillment in helping other people. Today, I am both humbled and honored to participate in this conversation alongside our distinguished guests, Dr. Nicholas Lesica and Ms. Sahrish Panjwani-Charania, and I sure hope I got that right. I've tried. They will both share with us insights from their research on assistive AI in their fields. Dr. Lesica is a professor of neuroengineering at University College London's Ear Institute. His research focuses on understanding how the brain processes auditory information, particularly through the study of neural coding in the early auditory pathway. His lab employs large-scale in vivo electrophysiology and computational methods to investigate these processes. Dr. Lesica has also explored the transformative potential of artificial intelligence in hearing healthcare and research. Sahrish is pursuing a PhD in science education and serves as an instructional coach, supporting high school interrelated special education teachers in Gwinnett County Public Schools in Georgia. She is also the project manager for Proportionate Shares, which develops resources for students with disabilities in private schools or those who are homeschooled. Sahrish has co-authored a systematic review on the use of artificial intelligence to support students with learning disabilities, highlighting various AI applications and their potential benefits. Sahrish has co-authored a systematic review. Please join me in welcoming our guests. Dr. Lesica, could you begin by telling us a bit about yourself and sharing how your research in neuroscience has evolved to incorporate assistive AI for those with disabilities?
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me here. That is definitely the most raucous applause I've ever received in a scientific meeting, so I appreciate that. I started my academic career as an engineer, so I studied engineering as an undergraduate, and technically my PhD is also in engineering. But during the course of my PhD, I started getting really interested in neuroscience, and the research that I was doing ended up being more neuroscience than it was engineering. And I kept going in that direction for a little while, with the hope being really that I would be able to keep making use of engineering principles, at least in the context of neuroscience. But at that time, and this is, let's say, the mid 2000s, the decade between 2000 and 2010, things really felt a little bit stuck. It didn't really seem like the engineering approaches that were available at the time could actually do all that much in the context of neuroscience. So I really took a turn and became a proper neuroscientist for a little while. And while I was doing that, my big thing became trying to record activity from the brain while it's doing some sort of process related to sensory perception, and trying to record that activity at scale. So the brain, as I'm sure you're aware, has billions of cells in it, and when I was a kid doing this stuff, we were lucky if we could see what one cell at a time was doing. And you can imagine in a brain of a billion cells, that's not necessarily going to tell you much. So during this period of time, now we're talking 2005 to 2015 or so, I really started getting interested in trying to look at more of what's going on in the brain and put a lot of effort into that. And did some quote-unquote proper neuroscience along the way. But then toward the end of that time, it started to become actually possible to think about how engineering might be able to come back into the picture, because that is when things like AI, and in particular deep learning, which you might have heard about, it's kind of modeling framework through which a lot of AI is built, all of that started to become available. And it turned out that that is really amazing in terms of the potential it has for being applied to problems in neuroscience, but then also for things like thinking about assistive technologies for people with some sort of sensory impairment. So that was the time around 2015 when my research really went back in this direction of engineering, because it turns out that the neuroscience I had been working on, trying to get lots and lots of observations of brain activity, turned out to have the possibility to provide the perfect kind of data for doing the AI and deep learning engineering stuff, and putting all that together. There seemed to be a lot of potential for things like assistive listening technologies.
It is just fascinating, really. I've read your research papers, and I'm just, maybe I'm a little bit of a geek there on it, but I've been fascinated by all of your papers. I mean, both yours and Sahrish's, and I want to know so much, but of course we only have a short amount of time. But I want to ask you this: what are some of the recent breakthroughs in neurotechnology that might surprise people regarding how we can now support or even restore neural functions?
Yeah, it really is a very exciting time, as you might imagine. And I'll focus in particular on my area of research, which is hearing technologies. I'm sure there are all sorts of other things related to other types of assistive technologies that I'm not necessarily an expert on. But in hearing technologies, the biggest, let's say, breakthrough historically is the cochlear implant. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but this is a device that helps people who are profoundly deaf to hear. And it does so by essentially bypassing the ear and communicating directly with the brain through electricity. And it's really an incredible achievement. I think the millionth cochlear implant was done maybe last year or the year before, so that gives you an idea of the scale, but it's really been expanding rapidly. And as incredible as this device is, it still doesn't restore hearing to its kind of biologically normal level in terms of resolution or fidelity. So there really is a lot of room for improvement, and that's a place where there's some incredible developments over recent years. So you can put them into several different classes. One thing that I think is really amazing is trying to figure out whether it's possible to actually stimulate the brain with light instead of electricity. So electricity is a fairly crude way of communicating with the brain. The brain uses electricity to communicate with itself, but it does this in a very nuanced way that we can't really recreate with something like a cochlear implant. But instead, people use light to generate neural activity in a lot of different contexts in neuroscience. This is something that's been done for a while. So the question is, can you build a cochlear implant that instead of using electricity uses light to communicate with the brain, which would give you a much finer level of control over the messages that you're sending to the brain, and therefore a much finer level of control over the auditory perception that you can create. Another thing that people are trying to do is to combine these devices with some sort of gene therapy, for example. So a lot of the problem, the challenge in communicating with the brain through a cochlear implant is that the nerves that connect the ear to the brain have not developed properly, or they've been degraded during the period of deafness. So if there's a kind of gene therapy, those nerves to come back towards the ear. And then, of course, there's all the sort of AI-based signal processing stuff that you might imagine, and you're probably using in your own technologies already, things like AI-based denoising. So if you want to pull speech out of background noise, maybe the cochlear implant can do that for you. And that is definitely something that even in the short term, I think we'll start to see. But it's maybe those other things that in the long term could end up having the bigger impact.
It's fascinating. What a great discussion. Thank you so much. So let's continue the conversation with Ms. Sahrish. She has a wealth of knowledge about the use of AI in assisting students with learning disabilities. Now, that's something that's very important to me as a mother and a grandmother. Um, Sahrish, can you please share with our audience a bit about yourself and your work and how you became interested in the use of AI to help students with learning disabilities?
Absolutely, and thank you for having us here. I'm very excited to share a little bit of my work. I'm definitely very new to the field of AI, so I don't have too much to share, but I'll share what I can. But in terms of my background and how I got interested in AI, so initially my undergraduate is in biology, so I was always interested in science, but then as I was going through my undergraduate program, I genuinely got interested in teaching. And when I went into the classroom, they had space available in a classroom for students with learning disabilities. And just in my limited scope, I didn't even realize that, there were classes that were dedicated to students with learning disabilities in a small group setting to provide them with that, streamlined learning that they need in the setting and with the strategies that they need. And so I started in the classroom teaching biology to students with learning disabilities. And that's kind of where my passion for working with those students came into play. And so, I was very excited to be able to try new things. And as a teacher, you're constantly trying, new strategies. But when it comes to students with learning disabilities, I found that, you definitely have to get to know the students. You have to know their strengths, and you have to know kind of where their areas of need are to customize the learning to what they need. And my interest in AI started to begin when I encountered firsthand the challenges as a teacher when I had multiple students with unique needs in a classroom, and I had to take my one lesson and adapt it to, multiple students. And one of the activities or examples I often give is if you think about planning a lesson for, a class full of students with learning disabilities, think about planning, a dinner party at home for your closest family and friends. At that point, you're going to customize, if you know someone is gluten-free or if you know someone is diabetic, you're going to have those individualized options. Whereas if you're planning, maybe a menu for a wedding, you're just going to have a couple of options, right? You may have like a vegetarian and a non-vegetarian. So I really had to customize my lessons, and I wanted to find ways to really make it a little bit easier so that I could do it on a more regular basis, because with the amount of time and effort it would take to customize my lessons for the individual needs of our students, it took a lot of time. And so I wanted to, find ways where I could do this a little bit more efficiently. And along that process, I became an instructional coach for special education teachers. And I realized that this is a challenge that not only am I facing, but I'm seeing across the district that I was supporting. And that really sparked my desire to explore some innovative solutions to say, well, how can we make this easier for our educators, right? And so as part of my graduate program and to deepen my understanding, I conducted this literature review that looked at 16 studies on AI's role in supporting students specifically with learning disabilities. And I was particularly looking for those that were not diagnostic. I wasn't trying to find AI that would help in diagnosing students with learning disabilities, because my goal was to support educators who are already working with students that have been diagnosed. And so I found that there was very limited research apart from AI for diagnosis, and I found that most current applications were aimed at dyslexia, so not even looking at the wide range of learning disabilities, just focusing on dyslexia. And again, many of them remain focused on diagnosis rather than that direct intervention. However, out of the studies that I did find, there is some emerging adaptive learning AI technologies, but a lot of them are still in trial or prototype phase, but they do show potential for delivering that personalized intervention that addresses not only students' academic needs, but we also realize that students with learning disabilities also have social and emotional challenges, and so a lot of these technologies also take that into account. And so particularly when it comes to STEM subjects where learning disabilities and different kind of social and emotional challenges can present more complex hurdles. But that's a little bit about my background.
I think that is so important and so useful with so many people, so many students suffering with learning disabilities now, and why they are is a subject for an entirely different conversation. But it seems that we have just a lot that are And so it's a really important thing. Your work often emphasizes the intersection between AI, user accessibility, and inclusivity. Could you tell us more, tell us some challenges you faced in ensuring that AI remains accessible for all users, especially for those with disabilities, and how do you see these challenges evolving as technology advances?
Absolutely. And I know, ensuring that accessibility when it comes to that assistive AI is often challenging. So in my research, one of the primary issues that I've kind of found is a limited focus, again, on empirical studies that focus on intervention to support learning disabilities, again, beyond that diagnosis. And I think, over and over again, I say that in my paper too, is most of the research that's out there when it comes to AI for students with disabilities is all about diagnosing. But what do you do once that diagnosis has been made? So there have been, adaptive learning and AI frameworks. So I adapted the SAMR model to include learning disabilities. So it shows how teachers can substitute, augment, modify, and then even redefine your traditional practices that you do in the classroom, your instructional practices, using AI. But again, there remains a gap in fully that customization for the different learning profiles, right? Because that's one thing that's really important to realize is that even if you have multiple students with the same learning disability, each of them will look very different, right? Each of them has different needs, different strengths that we can leverage. And so finding that customization that works for the different learning profiles is one of the challenges. And also this lack of kind of scalability, right? Can we scale this AI technology to really support all of the learners? But hopefully as technology advances, these challenges may shift toward creating AI systems that can adapt and learn from students' specific needs in real time. Whereas right now, this real time adaptation, we saw it in a couple of prototypes, but it's still, again, in that prototype mode. But ideally, these AI technologies, as we see technology advancing, the AI will hopefully learn the student, know their needs, know their strengths, and be able to adapt and customize the learning for the students in real time. But I think it's also important to really truly harness AI's potential. We have to prioritize developing tools that aren't only inclusive, but also capable of integrating into different educational settings. Because while we can take into account all of our learners, we also have to take into account all of our educators. And so this will require collaboration among educators, AI researchers, even policymakers in terms of how do we design AI that's equitable for all learners, regardless of their abilities, but then can also be easily utilized by educators of all abilities. So those that are maybe brand new out of college and may have the technology expertise, but then also those that may have been in the field for many years and have utilized lots of different tools and strategies, but may not be so tech savvy. So how can we leverage the spectrum of educators that we have as well?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I really appreciate the insight into your work. Dr. Lesica, when creating assistive technology, usability can vary greatly from person to person. How do you incorporate real-world feedback into the development process to ensure that your technologies are truly empowering and intuitive for users with different needs?
Thank you for the question. This is something that I'm quite proud to say in the UK that we couldn't even get around if we wanted to. So if you have a proposal to do some research or develop some technology that is intended to help a group of people, the first question you're asked is, well, have you talked to them and what have they told you that makes you think that this is what they actually want or need? So if you want to get money to do anything in the UK, you really are forced, which is of course a very good thing, to kind of co-design your plans with the user group that you're intending to deliver your outcome to. And for things like assistive listening technologies, it's obviously very clear who the user group is going to be. And at my university, we happen to have a hospital with an audiology clinic that we work very closely with. And in fact, there are people whose entire job it is at our university, and particularly in this hearing healthcare space, to arrange and facilitate these types of interactions to help integrate the potential users of our technologies into the research planning, and then of course into the actual testing of the devices that we might create once we get to that stage. So in terms of then continuing on to get, let's say, real world feedback, then I think we're getting into making sure that the devices are built in such a way as to firstly facilitate that, but then also take advantage of it. I think it's similar to what Sahrish was talking about in terms of actually getting the technology in a place where it can adapt itself in real time to a particular user's needs. That is going to be essential for hearing technologies to really provide the benefit that they have the potential to provide. So at the moment, if you have a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, for the most part, you have to go to the audiologist to get adjusted, and that might happen a few times when you first get the technology, but then after that, you're more or less on your own. Of course, there are meant to be checkups and check-ins, but when real life sets in, that doesn't always happen. Or if people are not necessarily living in a place where they have easy access to those sorts of services, then maybe they have no choice. Maybe they'd like to go back to the audiologist and get things updated, but they can't. So it really doesn't have to be this way. It's not even something that we need to think years ahead to imagine being a reality. It's possible now for assistive listening technologies to be adaptive to their users' needs. They simply need to be able to ask users whether they're happy with the product that they're getting at the moment, and if not, then how can things be changed? So at the moment, this would probably be through a sort of explicit test. Well, asking specific questions, or listen to these two types of ways that we're processing music for you. Which one do you prefer? But it's, I think, not unreasonable to expect that in a few years that kind of communication between user and device could be a lot more natural using the language models that we have now, and that you might just be able to say to your hearing aid, for example, hey, whatever you're doing right now isn't really working. The music sounds kind of tinny. Can you tweak that? And then the hearing aid actually has the ability to do it. And furthermore, it keeps track of all these conversations. And so next time you go into an environment that's similar to that one, you don't even have to ask. It remembers that you, particular user, like to hear this kind of music processed this particular way. And I think that's what we're really hoping to get to sometime over the next few years.
That will be incredible, but what a great answer. Ask the people who know best what they need, those who are affected. That's real common sense. Thank you. Sahrish, as you work to develop assistive AI solutions, what are some of the misconceptions you encounter about this technology? And how do you address these misunderstandings with your users or the public?
Absolutely. I think, again, going back to some of the similar things that I've said, a common misconception that I've come across is that assistive AI is primarily limited to just identifying disabilities rather than directly supporting learning. So just in my conversations with educators and others who support education, when we talk about AI, it's often like, well, we can use that to diagnose and identify different, areas of needs or areas to build on, but they don't realize the potential that AI could be. And I think a lot of it is that it exists, it's just not common, it's not, out there as easily accessible. And so, my review did find that much of the existing AI technology that we have, yes, it does focus on diagnosis, but it's not the only thing, right? And they, we have tools like Alexa. It was one of the studies that I looked at. And it was a smart assistant that uses AI to enhance the readability of different texts. So it uses things like chunking and read aloud and even highlighting. So just to kind of change up the way the text looks to support students with maybe dyslexia. And it shows just how assistive AI can adapt content to students' needs in real time. And students have control through that app in terms of what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And they can share that with the AI within it. And so that tool alone helps support, interaction, engagement, and just accessibility to that content for some of our students with those learning needs. There's also like communication assistants that are tools that maybe correct dyslexia-related text errors. So there was one AI application that I looked at, and it was all about social interactions, because often we find that the AI that we use, when we use it to correct errors, it makes it sound, very formal or very, as if an AI did develop it. And so there's research out there and a prototype out there that takes content, typed written content that a student with dyslexia would put in. It recognizes common errors that are often made by individuals with dyslexia, and it makes those corrections, but does so by kind of keeping a little bit of that slang or that informal conversation. So it's a little bit more smoother social interactions for students when it comes to interacting on social media platforms. So that gives them a little bit more confidence and a little bit more comfort in being able to engage in written conversations on social media platforms. So there are tools that do truly go beyond diagnosis. The issue or the challenge is that they're still in development and they're not yet widely accessible. But I'm hoping, recently, in the last few months at least, I've seen in our district too just a recent rise of the use of generative AI and its access to public. And I know it's been out there, it's just never been kind of talked about, it's never been discussed. And I know our district has kind of taken it on and has said, look, it's out there, people are using it, so why not teach people how to use it properly and show them how to access it? And so I'm hoping that similarly as we have advancements in assistive AI for learning disabilities, we'll see people using it, we'll see it become a little bit more common, and hopefully we can kind of erase that misconception. And it's, I think, also just that consistent communication to say, hey, here's what's out there, and also demonstrating in how that AI can be used to support students with learning disabilities. So as I go into support teachers, if it's a tool that's out there that can be usable, I'm talking about it, I'm sharing it. But unfortunately, I know a lot of these are still in prototype mode, but I'm hoping, when they're ready to be released to the larger public, we can constantly communicate and demonstrate how to use it so that educators get a little bit more comfortable in using it to adapt content and develop strategies that are tailored to our students with learning disabilities.
Thank you so much, Sahrish. This is wonderful information for us all. Dr. Lesica, could you discuss the importance of neuroplasticity in assistive AI and how your research utilizes the brain's adaptability to improve functionality in assistive technologies? And do you believe that this adaptability opens new possibilities for rehabilitation?
Yeah, this is an area for us where I think we actually need to do a lot better. In hearing devices, neuroplasticity is everything. If we think about cochlear implants in particular, there's actually a huge variability in the outcomes after implantation. So, broadly speaking, the devices are a huge success, but for seemingly similar people, they can end up being really amazingly successful versus only marginally successful. And it's not entirely clear what the reasons for that variability are, but the thing that tends to come at the top of most people's list of guesses is neuroplasticity. So once you have received a cochlear implant, your brain is now receiving this new information from the device that it needs to figure out how to make use of. And this is certainly not something your brain is set up to do right away. It's only something that the brain can do through these mechanisms of plasticity, which allow the brain to adapt to the new input that it's receiving and potentially make use of them. And it seems that the people who have the best outcomes with cochlear implants are the people who have the most capacity for this sort of plasticity. This is also why there's a big push across the world to get people to get cochlear implants as soon as they can. So as soon as a baby is born and known to be deaf, the recommendation would be that they receive a cochlear implant right away, because that immediately allows the brain to start learning to make use of the information that the implant is providing. And we all know that the developmental period of childhood is a period of great neuroplasticity. So the longer you wait, the more of that high plasticity window during development that is being lost. So then, coming to the more widely available technology of hearing aids, This is again the case. So somebody who has been losing their hearing gradually over the course of middle age and has now gotten to the point where they think they might want to get a hearing aid, their brain has been becoming used to the diminished input from their ear over time. And then all of a sudden, they get a hearing aid, and now, to some degree at least, that input is restored. But the brain is not immediately ready to make use of that. It has to, again, learn how to make use of that new information, and that, again, can only be done through neuroplasticity. Unfortunately, at this point, when we're past middle age, we don't have the capacity for neuroplasticity that we had when we were kids. But that doesn't mean there's no capacity at all. Of course there is. And we still notice that hearing aid outcomes depend on the degree to which people do seem to be able to adapt to the new information that the hearing aid is providing. But this is simply not something we have a good understanding of, or that frankly we've paid enough attention to. And I'm hoping that going forward, we'll be able to do that. And I think then circling back to the last question about potentially having real-time or daily adaptation of the device to the user's needs, this is where there can be an interaction between the device changing, the brain changing, the device changing, the brain changing, as opposed to going back to the audiologist once a year and maybe getting things updated. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to take more advantage of neuroplasticity and making these assistive listening technologies more beneficial for people. And it's not really something that we've paid enough attention to in the past, but I hope we will going forward.
Well, that has given me a lot to think about. Okay, let's talk about another important area. Sahrish, your work has delved into the social implications of assistive AI. In your view, what role does AI play in fostering community? I'm sorry, my phone. Let me turn that off. I apologize for that. In your view, what role does AI play in fostering community and social connections for individuals with disabilities?
Absolutely. I think AI definitely plays a unique role in fostering those social connections and by supporting that communication and just kind of reducing barriers that will often isolate students with learning disabilities. And so in my research, I found how, tools, AI tools like communication assistants, which utilize natural language processing, they help empower students with learning disabilities to communicate more confidently by helping them kind of autocorrect common written errors and helping them have that smooth, authentic interaction. So it's, again, not where it seems like it's, chat GPT jargon, but it's truly authentic communication that student may make. Like I mentioned earlier, that AI tool that can help detect those common dyslexia-related errors, but still preserves that social, informal tone that you would find on social media. And so students, again, have that comfort to engage with their peers online without the fear of having those spelling mistakes or without sounding like, they're another AI bot. Similarly, there's things like facial recognition that helps teachers kind of gauge how student engagement is and student interaction is in real time. So it gives them that, invaluable insight that enables them to offer them the students that support that they need. And so all of these different AI tools definitely help contribute to that socially supportive environment because it empowers students to express themselves, but it also empowers educators to help students participate actively. And I think the social benefits or just the benefits of AI in general definitely go beyond just academics because it helps create that sense of belonging, that sense of inclusion within classroom communities. And so it helps enrich that social interaction beyond just the classroom context because it can go into social media, but also just in everyday social interactions that students may have with their friends and their peers. And so again, it's not just academic growth, but that emotional and social emotional well-being, which I think in today's world that's very important.
I love how you think about that. Okay, now I have a question for both of you, and I'm going to ask Dr. Lesica to respond first. What does the future look like for assistive AI? And can you each share your vision for where you hope this technology will lead us, both in the next few years and in the longer term?
Sure, happy to do that. I should warn you that I'm not a terribly imaginative person. Although perhaps what I will describe will not be something that is something you think about all the time. Maybe I'm only giving myself a hard time because what I'm going to say is what everybody in my circles would say, which is that when we're talking about sensory technologies specifically, we're heading toward a world probably in the near term where everybody is wearing augmented reality, let's call them glasses, all of the time. And in that sense, we're hopefully reaching a point where assistive technologies can't actually be distinguished from whatever augmentative technologies that people without disabilities might be wearing. And that obviously would have all kinds of positive benefits associated with decreasing stigma potentially and things like that. And we already have a little bit of this, at least in places like London, with AirPods. People are constantly wearing AirPods, and for no reason that has to do with assistive listening. It's just that's the way people go about things nowadays. And so we've reached a stage where it's not only people who need assistive listening technologies who are wearing things on their ears, but actually quite a lot of people. And that seems like it's a very good thing. But if we then spin that forward, you can imagine 5, 10 years from now, instead of just wearing AirPods, people are wearing these kinds of glasses type devices that provide some sort of visual, I don't know what you would call it, screen. So you're actually viewing the real world with your eyes biologically, but then overlaid over that is some sort of extra information that's embedded in the screen on the glasses. You're walking by a restaurant, it shows you the Google rating for the coffee there or whatever. But you can imagine how it's not too hard to embed assistive technologies into that same sort of framework. And these would also, of course, be providing sound. So I think that is where it's really easy to see things going over the next 5 to 10 years, at least again in a place like London. I think there's all sorts of people in the world who wouldn't necessarily have access to that sort of technology on such a short time scale. And hopefully there will be other ways that things are able to reach them and provide them with some benefit. But within a community like London, I think that's what I would see as a kind of natural evolution of the direction we're heading in at the moment.
Great answer. Sahrish?
Absolutely. And I think kind of to piggyback off Dr. Lesica, I think that that importance of reducing that stigma is very important. And I think one of the things that I see as the future for AI and supporting students with learning disabilities is where that AI not only adapts that material and activity for that student based on their needs, but also does it in a way where it's discrete. So it's not very obvious that this student is getting something completely different, but that it's truly just adapted just like it would for anyone else. And I love that example of the AirPod. And similarly, I know in a lot of our classrooms we use Chromebooks and laptops to do a lot of our different activities. And so, one of the things that's not AI, but that I've seen over time that stigma has gone down, read aloud is a very common accommodation for a lot of students with learning disabilities. And in the past, it was, even if students needed it, they didn't use it because it was like, someone has to come and read it to me. And now everybody in the room knows that I have this read aloud accommodation. But now with the use of Chromebooks and laptops and a lot of our assessments even being computer based, we find that students can just plug in their headphones and just have the computer read it aloud to them. And now, the voices are also a little bit better. And so there's not so much of a stigma attached to it because they're like, okay, they could be listening to music or, they just have their headphones there for quiet. And so it allows them to receive that accommodation without being, singled out. And I'm hoping that the future of AI will look the same, where it will adapt materials and activities to students' needs without calling them out. But I think even more so, I also see, with the future of AI, to hopefully support teachers by recommending learning strategies based on student needs, because we can't expect, students to be on a computer that's constantly adapting the material for them. There's a reason we have, in-person educators for a lot of classes, or virtual educators, but an actual person who's supporting their learning. And I think some supports for them, such as learning strategies or techniques or accommodations that would benefit the students in their room, would be helpful. I know there's a software that, I looked at in my review called Be Special software, which is, again, also just in prototype mode, but it showed how AI can offer that customized learning strategy based on clinical data and self-assessment data. So it creates this personalized experience for the student, both from, adapting the content, but then also providing the teachers with the strategies. And right now in education, we definitely see that, we have a shortage of educators. There's a lot on the plates of our educators, and I'm hoping AI in the future can help alleviate some of those demands on them. And it will hopefully, increase teacher retention, which in turn will hopefully enhance teaching quality because our teachers will be in the classroom longer, they'll have that experience, and they'll have tools that will help meet those individual needs and provide that personalized learning experience for our students. And so that's kind of what I see as a vision. I don't know if it'll happen in the next 3 to 5 years, but hopefully in the near future, we can hopefully see this, in the next decade or so.
I really appreciate both of your answers. They're great answers. Now, I have one final question for both of you, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience. This is something that I'd like to know. What advice would you give to aspiring researchers and advocates in the field of assistive AI, and how can they contribute meaningfully to advancing technology that prioritizes accessibility and empowerment? And we're going to go ladies first. Sahrish.
Absolutely. And I think Dr. Lesica mentioned this earlier when he was talking about going straight to those who you're impacting and asking them. And I think my advice to aspiring researchers and advocates in the field of assistive AI would be same, right? To adopt this user-centered approach from the beginning and engage with those individuals, those students with disabilities, maybe their families, and the educators that support them to really understand what are some challenges, what are some needs that this AI can help fill. And this, I think, ensures that that technology developed is not just innovative, but is genuinely impactful, right? We don't want to create things that are exciting and amazing, but they don't actually support anyone. And so I think by going straight to who you're trying to impact, your stakeholders, will be helpful in helping you develop something that's impactful. And I think another big part is collaboration. I think, as researchers, we need to collaborate across different disciplines. We need to bring experts together. So we can't do this, isolated in the field of AI or isolated in the field of special education. AI, special education, psychology, maybe even policymakers need to come together to really design solutions that are practical, but also scalable to meet the needs that our stakeholders have. And I think something else just to add on is just bridging this research to practice gap. So often we see wonderful, promising technology that ends up staying in, the academic setting or in trial phases without being widely implemented. And I think researchers can help contribute to bridging that gap by conducting those studies that demonstrate that usability, efficacy, and maybe that real world application in the classroom. But we need to make sure that it comes back to the classroom. And I know I say this about all kinds of research. We have this wonderful research out there, but ultimately that goal is to get that research back into the hands of the educators and the students and the families that need it.
Thank you. You explained that very well. Now let's get Dr. Lesica's perspective on this.
I agree completely with everything that Sahrish said. I would add maybe on a practical note that there are actually a lot of barriers to including the people who you are aiming to help in your research. And maybe this is more acute in the UK than other places, but there is obviously rightly a lot of concerns about privacy and all sorts of data protection and things like that. But in the UK, it's actually, it would seem to me, overly balanced toward caution to the point where it does dissuade researchers from trying to engage. I'm thinking particularly of patients in a sensory context in the research. So I would say if people can be a part of patient advocacy groups and they feel that the balance toward protecting their data versus making their data available for the development of technologies that might help them is overly cautious, that they should voice that. I think that if patient advocacy groups want to say, hey, we're willing to actually accept a little tiny bit of risk here, if it's viewed that way, I don't even know that it needs to be viewed that way, but we're willing to be a little more flexible with allowing our data to be used or allowing people to even contact us. In the UK, you can't even necessarily contact somebody, or a clinician who's seeing a patient can't recommend that they get in touch with a researcher who's working on something that might help them. So again, maybe we're a little bit over the top here with that kind of protective stuff, but I think if it came from the patient advocacy groups that they actually wanted a little more openness, then that might have some impact and actually accelerate the collaboration between technology developers and users in this sort of space.
Fantastic answers, all of them. This has been such a pleasure getting to sit here and speak with you. And now we're going to have some questions from the audience. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
I have a question from Gentle. Gentle says, thank you both for your candid reflections on this technology. Ms. Panjwani-Charania, I hope I got that right, what are your main general concerns about children using AI? What are the negatives here? You probably saw that our next presenter, Rose Hill, will share some of her concerns about that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. Absolutely. I know with any technology, right, while there's benefits, there's also challenges and concerns about how our students will use it. And I think one of the concerns with AI, not just the AI that, we're talking about kind of in my paper, which is all about supporting their needs, but just AI in general, there's concerns in terms of, what they'll do with it, in terms of what they'll access, what they'll see, what they'll come across. And I think one thing we'll have to do as educators and as parents and those that support students is just being able to educate them on how to best use it. I know something that I'm seeing currently as an instructional coach supporting teachers is even for our educators, we don't know how they'll use that AI. We've given them the access, but we don't know what they'll do with it and how they'll use it, just like our students. And so, what we've started to do with our educators is started to train them how to use it, giving them the supports and the space to be able to learn how to do it. And I think we'll have to do the same with our students, is we need to give them the space to use it and show them how to use it. I think if we just avoid it, it probably won't be the best way or best course of action to handle. Is I think we definitely need to come up with a game plan to say, okay, our students are going to use AI. They're going to come across AI. They could end up in a path that doesn't lead to good results. But how can we end up in a good place by showing them how to use AI in a way where they leverage their strengths within the AI, but then they also get some good feedback and good resources through the AI. I know with our educators, one thing we've been doing is showing them how to use different prompts and how to use different techniques to leverage AI, but then knowing that whatever you get out of AI is not the end and be all, that you need to take what that AI provides and you need to put in your own, 2 cents. And I think we need to do the same with our students to show them how to use it, how to use the right questions so that they get the right results, but then also teaching them that, this is not the end and be all. How can you take this, add in your personality, add in your 2 cents before you take it and go? Hopefully that answers the question.
Pigus Kid asks or says, I love the everyone AirPods. So my use of them for hearing augmentation doesn't stand out concept. This is the principle of universal design. If our presenters aren't familiar with that term, I encourage them to check it out. And Mook asks, this is a question for either of our speakers. We've had to acquire literacy each time a new technology emerges. The younger generations are generally technologically and digitally literate. If your computer breaks, you turn to your 12-year-old. Being technologically literate is easier to define though. What would AI literacy look like, and how would we go about acquiring it?
I can start us off because I think I kind of talked a little bit about that. I know, as we're supporting some of our educators in using AI, we've got a range of educators, both that are, very technologically literate, and then some that are not very technologically literate. And so I don't know what exactly AI literacy will look like, but right now the way we're kind of going about it is really trying to teach them the pros and cons of AI, like what are some benefits of AI and what are some downsides of AI. And I think some of what AI literacy may look like is knowing how to prompt properly, how to utilize the right inputs so you know what your outputs are. And I think another big part of AI literacy, something kind of when we used to talk about, I know when I was a student, in the classroom, one of the things when we were using the internet, we were often told, like, know where your sources are coming from, right? Know if you're going online and Googling a topic about, say butterflies, know, what website you're using, know if it's a legitimate or a valid source. And I think when it comes to AI literacy, we may need to kind of think of it from that sense, like know, which AI tools you're using. Ask for the research. I know I was just recently at a conference where we talked about Gemini, which is Google's AI, and now Gemini provides resources, like actual links to where all of that information is coming from. So when you're actually, looking at the response that you get from the AI, you can see the resources. And I know sometimes I put in something and I'm like, wait, that doesn't sound right. And the resources that AI is using aren't very valid. And so I think a big part of AI literacy will be don't just take what you get, but go back and look at the resources that AI is using and make your own judgment call. Don't let the AI make that judgment call.
Yeah, I think Sahrish made some great points. I think there's kind of a double-edged sword to what I'm going to suggest, which is that the kind of, let's call it technological literacy that was referred to in the question about, well, the computer breaks, you can ask your 12-year-old to fix it. I think the whole hope with the next generation of technologies is that that sort of thing will no longer be a problem with all language models like ChatGPT and so on. The idea is we should be able to actually communicate through our standard means with these technologies, which means that they are immediately more accessible than the technologies of the past, which might have had a learning curve associated with them. But then that we get into the worries that Sahrish was bringing up related to, well, are they actually trustworthy or not? So the problem moves from there being this barrier to actually even accessing the technology or interfacing with the technology to this worry about, well, is it actually providing me with what I want it to provide me with? And that is something that I think Sahrish has already addressed far better in terms of recommendations than I could. That's something I kind of worry about and don't feel like I have actually anything useful to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Some useful resources. Gentle posted the UDL guidelines from CAST. Ches says, Gemini told someone to self-delete recently with no prompting, I heard. Marley says, I'm wondering now how AI might affect human evolution. Will the more direct ways of knowing disappear? Hmm. Mook says, and this is for Sahrish, so in a way, gaining AI literacy is also about putting the human me back in the loop. Ches shared a link to the story about Gemini. And Pecco's kid said, is it trustworthy is also a problem with 12-year-olds. And Sahrish said, absolutely.
I had a question come into my IM from Warthog June. The question is, do they see personal LLMs in the future? And I guess that's for both of you.
I worry about that. That kind of thing scares me personally. I hate the idea of there being actually a digital version of myself or my spouse or a family member or someone I know. I think it is something that could definitely happen. Certainly for people for whom there is a lot of content available for the AI to learn from, we will absolutely have that. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we have it already. If you want ChatGPT to speak to you in the style of Charles Dickens or whatever, it can do that. For the average person who there isn't already pages and pages or hours of text or speech on the internet to train from, I think we can still probably get something that is going to be credibly personalized at a very superficial level quite quickly, but it won't be the sort of thing that's going to fool you into thinking you're talking to your daughter that soon. But I definitely would, if people are either worried or excited about this on a 5 to 10 year time scale, I would agree with you that it's something that is totally possible.
Yeah, agreed. I definitely think it's possible, and I agree. I don't know if I like the idea of it in terms of having a digital version of ourselves. I think I'm a big believer in that human touch. But again, it could be a useful tool, like Dr. Lesica said, if it's talking to a famous person or something where there's a lot of information out there. But if we start to do it for our personal selves, we lose that human touch, right? It won't be very natural. It'll be very superficial. So nothing more to add there. But I think Dr. Lesica gave a good overview of that.
I think it's a terrifying prospect, honestly.
Okay, we are at the end of our time. I just want to thank Liberty and both of our guests for a really interesting, informative session. Both of our guests have giver boxes, so please feel free to click on the boxes beside our guest speakers for more references, things to follow up. Let me see, I'm not sure if somebody wants to post some contact information for our guest speakers in the chat, but I do want to thank you both for coming and giving us some food for thought.
This is Gentle, and if you
Thank
click
you.
on boxes by the presenter's feet, you will be able to get their contact information and some reading.
It was great to meet you all. Thanks a lot for having me.
Same, yes, it was great to chat and learn from you all. Thank you for having us.
And thank you so much, both of you, for being here with us today. It was absolutely my pleasure to be with you.